With week 13 of the college football season now completed, the schedule had several uninteresting matchups on it, as well as two major matchups that could have huge implications on the college football playoff. But these small matchups or insignificant matchups turned out to have huge ramifications for the teams ranked in the top 25. Want to find out which teams it affected and how they were affected? Stay tuned to find out on Gridiron Gab Triple Option. Welcome back, Gabbers. Thank you all so much for joining us yet again for another edition of Gridiron Gab Triple Option. Of course, you hanging with your man, Mr. CeeLo here. And I hope all of you are doing great and y'all are getting ready for the Thanksgiving season and got you a nice bird and a bunch of yummy goodies to chow down on. I know you do, Brad. But hopefully you guys are going to spend the Thanksgiving with your families and have a really good time and cut plenty of jokes and share lots of memories. Got to get through a couple of comments. Of course, my man Brad, not much. My dogs are going to the ATL. Yeah, they're going to Atlanta. Now the question is, I'm thinking it's pretty much going to be cut and dry. If Texas can beat Texas A&M, it'll be a rematch between those two. Either way, it's going to end up being a rematch because if it's going to be Tennessee, it'll either be Tennessee or Texas. So we're going to be into that. But Janet had a comment to what I saw in this game. She says, "You mean the refs ran through Colorado?" Janet, no. All season we've watched Deion and the Colorado Buffaloes be the beneficiary of many calls. They've been the beneficiary of more calls than I can shake a stick at. Okay? The fact is, Kansas was a hungrier team and a better team. They haven't been able to stop the run all year, and if you watch the show, it basically lays it out for you. And had I been able to get my show out there, the pregame show, I would have told you that Kansas was going to win this game. Brad can attest to this. I told Brad that was going to happen. I've told several people that Kansas was hot. Kansas was one of my preseason picks. But their quarterbacks finally stopped turning the football over, which is why they are enjoying such success at this moment. And as far as Colorado goes, they deserve the tumble. They're not a good football team. They've got a quarterback and maybe one good player, and he is not Heisman worthy. For any of you that think Travis Hunter is better than Ashton Jeanty or even Cam Ward, you're nuts. Playing both sides of the ball against inferior opponents does not make you a Heisman candidate. You have to do something extraordinary. Ashton Jeanty is doing that. But that's not the topic. But I appreciate the comment. I always like to see different points of views because I like to be able to express my point of views instead of just giving out facts. But thank you so much, Janet. I hope you subscribe to the show. But as I said before, we've got a landscape that is brewing. It's like a big hurricane. The perfect storm is brewing. And I'm excited. I just hope that it doesn't go down the way I'm thinking it's going to go down because I'm not a big fan of this whole, ooh, I love the SEC, I love the SEC, because here's the reality of it. They're playing each other. For those of you that are just in love and enamored with the SEC, much like Paul Feinbaum is, not Feinbaum, all of that garbage. Because it's garbage. That's exactly what it is. You know, these teams are playing each other. Why do we need to see the same rematches over and over again? No, they're not the best teams because the same thing that's happening in the Southeastern Conference is happening in the Big Ten, Big 12, ACC. Right now, SMU is getting disrespected. Oh, yeah. You basically, every program is having to prove themselves because, oh, well, Georgia's been here. Ole Miss, I can tell you right now, SMU will beat Ole Miss. SMU will beat Alabama. You heard me. This tells me right here that the committee's not watching the games. Uh-oh. Tells me Paul Feinbaum ain't watching the games either. Because here's the thing. We shouldn't be placing these teams based on, ooh, how they played against Georgia or how they played against Texas. I don't care. Here's the thing. I always heard your potential and reaching your potential are two different things. What your potential is and then whether you reach your potential are two different things. Can't sit here and say, "Oh, I'm gonna play bad 1 week and then the next week I'm just going to bed." Can't do that. I'm sorry. We're not punishing for losses now. And here you are sitting here talking about a team that's got one loss in SMU, and it was a very, very long time ago. SMU is putting the brakes on everybody. Not even close. Not even close. And then you got my boys. But let's get into it. I'm going to stop. We'll get into it later. Number 24, UNLV. 27, San Jose State, 16. As we look at this game here, the San Jose game was not really as close as the score appeared. San Jose got 6 off of a pick six. And we saw Jaden Thomas run 26 times for 135 yards and a touchdown, along with Ricky White, 7 grabs for 98 yards. UNLV is going to be a team that's going to be a little bit slippery and a little bit unknown because of their late arrival into the top 25. But I think they've got an offense, not quite Tulane-ish, but a very high potent offense if they meet up with the right defense. And we'll talk about how high potent offenses can be affected, as we saw a team earlier. A team that we're going to talk about in the main event that used something that they hardly ever use in the tradition of their program to stop one of the most potent offenses in the country. Respect it, but normally it throws off the offensive coordinator when he actually goes about it the way he did. Great move, great coaching, but at the same time, it kind of catches you off guard. And a team that you can't get rid of this team out of the top 25 with a nuclear bomb. I don't know what you AP coaches and press see in this team, because there are about 3 other teams that belong in the top 25, and this one doesn't. Next up, we got the 9-2 Iowa State Cyclones, who seem to be getting back on track. The number 22 Iowa State Cyclones and the unranked Utah Utes at 4-7, 28. There was some questions as to what Whittingham is going to do. Kyle Whittingham is going to do it. Coach Kyle Whittingham of the Utah Utes is going to do it at the end of the season. They're saying he's going to take some time and figure out his future. I'm looking at the statistic. Rocco Beck was 20 of 38, 256 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Meanwhile, Carson Henson was 14 of 57 for 2 touchdowns. 14 carries, 57 yards, and a touchdown. Henson also had the 13-yard touchdown run with a $131 remaining in this game. As well as Jaden Higgins had 9 grabs for 155 yards and a touchdown. Utah had a chance to get back in this thing, but they could not convert. So, yeah, Iowa State was on the verge of being beaten in this one too. This was a pretty good nail biter, if that's what you were looking for. There was a couple of nail biters that could have gone the other way. And then there were some that, yeah, you know the deal here. But Iowa State goes to 9-2. They continue their rise and hopeful shot at the Big 12 championship game. This is a wide open competition now for the Big 12. And it's going to be interesting on Selection Sunday. It's going to be interesting this weekend, because this is all going to determine who goes into championship Sunday. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, I'd rather avoid it. No, you don't have the luxury of avoiding it in a lot of cases. And I'm sick of hearing this narrative that if you're in the SEC and you don't play in the championship game, you still get to go. No, not necessarily. Because it ain't all just about the best teams getting in there. Because if that's the case, as I said before, you might as well just take the 12 best rosters, put them in a hat, shuffle them up, and see who gets home field. That's the way some of y'all are saying. Notre Dame's got one of the best rosters in the country, and y'all are already ready to shuffle them out. It's mighty funny you want to punish them for their one loss one or what you call a bad loss, but because another team makes up for it with a big win, we just gonna excuse that one loss. Doesn't work like that. And a lot of you fans out there are like that. You play the game so you can prove who belongs. Iowa State 31, Utah 28. The Cyclones go to 9-2. The Utes drop to 4-7. As I said, Whittingham will have he will sit down and have a moment to map out his future. Next, we had one where the fans stormed the field early. And why they did that, I don't understand, because they've got one of the hottest football teams that nobody's talking about. And that would be the 21st ranked Arizona State Sun Devils and the BYU Cougars. Arizona State 28, BYU 23, as the fans stormed the field early. It took about 15 minutes from what I heard to get order restored so they could finish this thing. Arizona went up 21-0 early. And then they found themselves up 21-3 at the half as they came out in the second half. BYU scored on 3 of the last 4 drives. What's so significant about that is they scored on 3 straight drives. In the last drive, they got picked off. 3 straight drives they scored in the second half, and the last one they got picked off. But ultimately, it was a good game. It was just one of those where the Arizona State Sun Devils did enough. And of course, it's in their building. So you know what? What does Mr. CeeLo always say? Home field. Jake Retzlaff was 23 of 38, 346, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Chase Roberts, 6 for 108. Darius Lassiter, 5 for 103. Then you look over at the Arizona State Sun Devils. Sam Levitt, 16 of 25, 247, 1 touchdown and interception. John Scatterbo, 28 carries, 147 yards, 3 touchdowns. If you guys don't know anything about Arizona State, they are going to have themselves a running back. They always got at least one, and they got a big receiver. Speaking of which, Jordan Tyson, 9 grabs, 125 yards. So Arizona State is in prime position to go for that Big 12 championship. They're another team that is exceptionally white hot. They are very hot. So while we sit here, we talk about South Carolina, the hottest team in the country. Guess what? Stop with your SEC bias, okay? Between them and Kansas, which we'll get to in a minute, they're the hottest teams that nobody's talking about. Now everybody's talking about Kansas. Thank you, Dion. But Arizona State goes to 9-2. BYU drops to 9-2. So it's going to be a huge battle in that last week to decide who is going to go into the Big 12 title game. As the Clemson Tigers will go to 9-2, as they, as I said, will have their interstate rivalry between between them and South Carolina. And it could have implications into the college football playoff. We'll never know until all of the results of week number 14 fall into play. But it's going to be very interesting, you guys, because as I said, these rivalry games, we've already seen so many different scenarios play out when it comes to difference of play styles, as well as teams coming in and not doing what they're supposed to do and handling their business. This is why I'm not a fan of teams that are getting in, simply because they beat this team one week. Guess what? There are a lot of teams that are pulling massive victories. I mean, Kansas is not a 500 team yet, but should we put them in the playoff because they've knocked off 3 top 15 teams? What? What the? Top 20. Judging by your criteria and what you're saying, that means we should. So let's pump the brakes on that. So let's stop with the SEC bias, okay? Because guess what? I can make the same argument from teams in the Big 10 and the Big 12. They pull off the massive upsets as well. It's called home field advantage. Damn, I'm good. Next, we got that team that I was telling y'all about. Them darn Jayhawks. If y'all know anything about Jayhawks, they take eggs. And what did them Jayhawks take this week? Them eggs of them Colorado Buffaloes. That egg that was going to get them in the college football playoff. Not. Shedeur Sanders was 21 of 29, 266, and 3 touchdowns. However, he led the team in rushing with 26 yards.
God damn.
I don't care if you got Tom Brady on your team. You have to be able to run the football. You got to be able to run the football. But Mr. Neal was the big deal. 37 carries, 270 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also added 4 catches for 80 yards and a touch, for a grand total of 1, 2, 3, 4 touchdowns. And I love the way he looked down at his jersey, because his jersey is number 4. Number 4. I enjoyed watching this game. I watched this game from the national anthem all the way to the last guy interviewed. This game was just absolutely what I expected from Kansas. This is what I expected all season. And honestly, the quarterback, Jalen Daniels, finally stopped turning the ball over. He is going to have to get with the quarterback skills. It is imperative that this guy learn how to accurately throw a football. There were so many throws he left out there on the field. And it was at one point where I was thinking, why are y'all throwing the football? And Daniels is not even hardly running the ball. He had 6 carries for 72 yards. It was like they waited to the second half and said, uh-oh. And we all know Colorado cannot stop the run. They have been struggling stopping the run all season. But let's take a look at Mr. CeeLo's formula to the upset. I'm sorry. Colorado 15 first downs, Kansas 29. Oh, guys, y'all got to hear this. Kansas nearly outrushed Colorado by 400 yards. Kansas almost outrushed Colorado by over 300 yards. Look at this. 331 to 42. Neither team had a turnover, but look at that time of possession. 40 minutes to darn near 20. They doubled the output. And look at the score. Same result. Same result, people. So the next time an SEC fan person comes up to you and says, the SEC deserves 4 teams, let's put South Carolina in there. They got lots of upset wins.
What a dumbass.
Nobody's had a losing record and beaten 3 top 20 football teams in the same season. So this is where this narrative is going to be going to get some major pushback, especially by someone like me. Because the way Kansas is playing, they deserve to go. But see, you have to look at their record. The record still counts. This is the problem I have with so many people. You can't decide to show up one game and the opposing side decides they're not going to show up. You can't sit there and say, hey, we're going to take that into account. Because they may have not have showed up that game. They may have couldn't get it together. You never know. So I'm not going to do that. And you shouldn't do it either. And the committee shouldn't do that either. Record matters.
You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Colorado falls to 8-3. Kansas goes to 5-6. They could go in next week and finish their season at 6-6 after a dreadful start and finish up with a 4-game winning streak, which would be mostly impressive considering this team was dead in the water about a month ago. And now they're a team that nobody wants to play. Oh, Heisman hopeful Travis Hunter finished with 8 grabs, 125 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 7 tackles. Good stat sheet. But it's not Ashton Jante's or Sampson's. Number 15, Texas A&M 41 in quadruple overtime. In a game that is probably going to spell doom for the Texas A&M Aggies unless somehow or another they're able to knock off the Texas Longhorns on Saturday. This doesn't all but put them out, but it's surely going to hurt them in the opportunity of getting back in there, because the only way they're going to get back in this thing is unless they can knock off Texas and do it rather convincingly. Because up until now, they had a chance. And I mean, it is a classic case of looking ahead, or a reverse trap game. That's what it was. And the trap was set. And Auburn took advantage. This is a team that has been trying to get out of its own way all season, between quarterback play and just bad tackling on the defensive side of the football. And a lot of it's just bad mistakes by the offense. A lot of that's what it's been. But you can really analyze that this is a team that's been getting better. And of course, like I always tell you guys, home field matters. Auburn led this game 21-7 at the half. And you sense that there was going to be a rally because Marcel Reed is just one of those kids. It didn't seem like it was going to be like a game they had earlier this year where they just were not going to get back in this game. But Marcel Reed finished 23 of 35, 297, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. He had 66 yards more on the ground. So once again, this is a kid right here that's going to be in the Heisman race if he can stay healthy and get a more accurate intermediate throw, whether it's across the middle or outs. Noah Thomas had 5 grabs, 124 yards, and 2 scores. Amari Daniels, 27 carries for 90 yards and a touchdown. Good to see him back on the field. Peyton Thorne for Auburn was 19 of 31, 301, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Surprising considering how scrappy this Texas A&M defense is. But you could tell this was going to be a situation where Auburn was eventually going to get back on track. You just didn't know when. But I don't know. Did Peyton Thorne do enough to save his job? But everybody knows that Deuce is coming to Auburn, so the freshman didn't just commit there just to sit on the bench. But Auburn goes to 5-6, A&M falls to 8-3. And let's look at Mr. CeeLo's formula for the upset. As A&M had 6 more first downs, Auburn won the total yards battle by 5 yards. The turnovers were even, but A&M controlled time of possession. So once again, Mr. CeeLo's formula doesn't prove true. But I will tell you this. What does prove true? The home field is real. Always remember, home field. Home field. Jaquez Hunter had 28 carries for 130 yards, 2 touchdowns for the Auburn Tigers. Kim Coleman, 7 grabs, 128 yards, and 2 scores. As the Auburn Tigers find themselves in a position to possibly get to a bowl game. So hopefully next week, and that's going to be a tough task because guess who they got? It's the Iron Bowl. So I wish you best of fortune in that one, Tiger fans. All right, number 13, SMU 33, Virginia 7. As the SMU takes its high-powered offense into Charlottesville, who's already seen the likes of the University of Notre Dame, as Kevin Jennings and Brashard Smith, come in looking to clinch a spot in that ACC title game. Now, we've already seen them put up a huge amount of points against some of the best football teams in the top 25. Some of the best football teams that the ACC has to offer in its first year. And SMU is just coming out there and they're just putting on a show. Kevin Jennings, 25 of 33, 323 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. As Brad would say, pony up, Pony Express. I'm on it. I'm a believer. I me and him had a conversation. I believe when SMU, this is when college football, is at its best. When you have some of the most elite programs from the 80s and 90s being reborn. You're seeing the Miami's resurgence. You're seeing SMU's resurgence. This is exciting when you get these programs that are resurging and starting to become successful, along with these modern age powerhouses in Ohio State and Oregon and Georgia. And you're seeing these teams that are coming back. And even the University of Notre Dame is starting to come back and reclaim its mojo. So when you have that landscape, it makes college football not only exciting, but with this 12-team playoff, it makes it more and more suspenseful. And when something is more suspenseful, you can't turn it off. You want to keep it on. You want to watch everything you can eat up on it, which reminds me, make sure you subscribe to the show so you can catch all of the suspense and you don't miss a thing. Now, SMU had 2 turnovers, but as I said many times with Virginia, my biggest problem with Virginia is they couldn't stop anybody. In this game, they couldn't score. You remember the Pitt upset? I thought Virginia was going to be able to do more than what they were able to do in this football game, which was shocking. I thought this was going to be a game that Virginia was going to be able to keep up in the track meet for a little while. And then SMU was just going to blow the doors off. Unfortunately, it was not even close. And as I said, SMU is going to clinch a spot in the ACC title game, go to 10-1, and they're ranked 13th. Tell me how that's possible. This is a team nobody's going to want to watch. And you guys are going to see why I'm a little bit perturbed when we get to that playoff. SMU goes to 10-1. Virginia falls to 5-6. Number 12, Boise State 17. Wyoming 13. Now this almost turned into a disaster for Boise State as they were able to get on top late. As our guy, Ashton Jonty, had 19 carries, 169 yards, and a touchdown. But let's look at something. Wyoming did everything just about right. First downs, Boise won by 2. Total yards, Boise had 43 yards more. Neither team had a turnover, but Wyoming controlled the clock by almost 10 minutes. 10 minutes. And the truth of the matter is, and I did not watch the entirety of this game, but I did not understand how come Jonty didn't get any more than 19 carries. I get it. Wyoming possessed the clock a lot. And Boise State really, in my opinion, could not establish any kind of rhythm, which is why I'm that may be the reason why Jonty didn't get the football. But I felt like he didn't touch it enough. And every time Jonty touches it, he's a home run threat. So, yeah. But Wyoming gave it a valiant effort. And as I said, Boise State had the best player on the field and arguably in the country. Boise State stacks up another one. Next, we got number 10, Georgia, 59, and UMass 21. See, this is why I'm not a proponent of, when people want to sit there and say, oh, we beat up on somebody. See, I'm not a fan of, a win is a win. Well, when you give up 3 touchdowns to a team that's not really on your level, see what Tennessee did to UTEP? They shut that down. Beck was 20 of 31, 4 touchdowns. Frazier had 21 carries, 136 yards. Smith, 3, 110, and a touchdown. Not much to it. Georgia goes to 9-2, and they close out in their clean, old-fashioned hate game against Georgia Tech next week. Don't be surprised if Tech gives them a run. All right, Melo, do your thing. Then we got the Gator Special. The Gator Special. As the number 9 Ole Miss Rebels walked into the swamp like a lot of people, and they were never seen again. Florida 24, Ole Miss 17. This was a game that you could almost see coming because Florida's been playing great the last couple of weeks. They have finally started to get some continuity, not only with their offense, but the offense is becoming complementary to this defense. Ole Miss fumbled inside its own territory, which really was a catalyst to finish this game off, in my opinion, because you had a 14-14 tie going into halftime. And you had 2 interceptions on the last 2 drives. You can't have that and be a college football playoff team. Dart went 24-41, 323 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. probably the biggest thing that killed them was the fact that they could not run the football. As we look at the formula for the upset, Ole Miss had 5 more first downs. They had 120 more yards of offense, but they had 3 turnovers to Florida's 1. Now, how many times have I told you? You don't necessarily win. This is where the formula comes in play. You don't win the battle unless you can get 100 yards per turnover difference. So they had 2 more turnovers, so they needed to have 544 yards of offense. They couldn't do it. So then you look at time of possession. The Gators won there by about 8 seconds. So no major mix there. But you go back to the yardage differential. That makes a huge difference. And that is how Florida was able to get it done between Bryce Thornton and Trick Bridges combined for 25 tackles in this game. And then you had Michael Johnson, 18 carries, 107 yards, and a touchdown. And DJ Lagaway had 10 for 17, 180 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Florida wanted to control the pace of this game, and they did. You saw many moments where Ole Miss was trying to slow the pace down a little bit because they were trying. Honestly, I don't know what they were doing because that's not Ole Miss's game. Ole Miss's game is to speed you up, get you out of sorts, and run as many plays as they possibly can, get you wore out in the later parts of this game. They couldn't do it because they couldn't get out of their own way. But now Ole Miss is on the outside looking in. They need to be way outside, and I'm not happy about it. Ole Miss falls to 8-3. Florida goes to 6-5, and they are now bowl eligible. Number 8, Miami 42, Wake Forest 14, as Cam Ward continues his campaign for a Heisman Trophy. He finishes 27 of 38, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jordan Lau had 7 carries for 115 yards and a touchdown. Here's a stat, you guys. The Hurricanes had 228 rushing yards in this game. Something that I had said on this show, they're going to have to remedy. They're going to have to start running the football. It can't just be the Cam Ward 330-yard game every single night. They're going to have to utilize running the football and having other teams having to respect their ability to run the football, because what happens if they can start running the football, a whole lot of other things open up in the passing game that will just make them an absolute nightmare. They're already tough to stop right now, but can you imagine if they get the play action pass going with Restrepo? Let me stop. Miami goes to 10-1, and they haven't necessarily punched their ticket to the ACC title game yet, but that will be done this weekend. Too bad Natasha ain't watching the show, but Oklahoma pulled off arguably one of the top upsets of the year. Now, it's an upset based on the ranking, but it's an upset because if you ain't ranked and you win at home, it's supposed to be by the smallest of margins. Not no absolute beatdown like this one. Let's go to Mr. CeeLo's formula for the upset. Oklahoma, 18 first downs to Alabama's 13. Then they outgained the Alabama Crimson Tide by almost 100 total yards. And then here's the stat that I'm sure Nick Saban is going to be just absolutely livid about. Oklahoma rushing the football had 257 yards to Alabama's 70. And the Tide had 3 turnovers. So yeah, when you think about the margin of error, which was 3 turnovers, they needed 200 yards based on the turnover margin. They weren't even close to achieving that. Xavier Robinson, 18 for 107 and 2 scores. Jackson Arnold, 25 carries for 131 yards. This game, you knew Oklahoma had a great defense when you saw them facing off with Tennessee. But they just couldn't get anything going offensively. I had no doubt that Brent Venables was going to come out and he was not going to want to finish because he knows he's got a rough matchup next week. But he does not want to finish this season on a bad or a sour note. This is not something he wants to do. He does not want to finish this season on a note where he's going to have people questioning whether or not he should stay, whether or not he's worthy of being the coach there. And, it's been a rough go with Brent Venables. I mean, we can't even sit here and deny that. There have been some serious doubts about whether this guy is capable of leading a team to the promised land. I mean, I thought myself, he needs to prove himself right out the gate. And honestly, he has not done that yet. Now, a lot of people are going to say, should he get next season? I'm for one saying he should get next season because you can't predict Dylan Gabriel walking out the door. So, in all fairness to Venables, it was a tough season. It was a tough go, and then he lost half his receiving corps. So, yeah, it's a tough go. But the Sooners go to 6-5, and Alabama pretty much finds itself, 8-3 and outside. Number 4, Penn State, 26. Unranked Minnesota, 25. This was a great game, and honestly, it was a game that could have arguably went in the hands of Minnesota. They were up 10-0, and then as soon as they got up 10-0, Penn State just kind of said, okay, what do you think you're doing? We're not having this. So they made a run. Aller finished 21 of 28, 244, 361. And I can't completely say that this was not an impressive comeback, given that it was in Minneapolis. Minnesota's exceptionally tough when they play at home. But when you look at how this game was going, Minnesota had some serious... You knew what was going to happen. You knew ultimately that Penn State was going to come back and make a run. It's just like all the great teams. When you get ahead of them, you already have to expect that there's about to be some reckoning. And the strip sack at the beginning of the fourth quarter was a huge reckoning for Minnesota. As they were able to kick a field goal, Minnesota was able to kick a field goal and get within a point after the turnover that Penn State capitalized on. And they got they being Penn State got the football back with 5 minutes and 49 seconds, and they proceeded to run the clock out. That is impressive. When you can go on the road, run the football, and run the clock out. Now, that is probably one of the more impressive wins that I've seen Penn State get. But the margin. But we can say it. Mr. CeeLo always believes every road win is a tough one. Not because it's in the SEC. See that? They get competitive games in the Big 12 too.
Bruh.
All right, number 3, Texas, 31, Kentucky, 14. Didn't see too much. It seemed like, Texas they had this game under control. It reminded me more of the Michigan game. It was in doubt early, but Ewers and company put those doubts to bed. As Wisner ended up with 26 carries, 158 yards. Jaden Blue, 15 for 96 and a touchdown. Texas is starting to get their running game on track. If they can get their running game on track, unlike they did in their one loss, they're a tough team to stop. But I think ultimately, I saw a Texas team, and I saw a Quinn Ewers that was absolutely shook. Whether he was dealing with that abdominal injury still or not, he was shook. I did not see the same player that I've seen the last couple of weeks. And if we can see that in the rematch with Georgia, given that Texas is able to defeat A&M in College Station, we'll see that great rematch we've been wanting to. Hopefully he's at his full health when we get him, or when we get to see him. But Texas goes to 10-1. Kentucky falls to 4-7. Gab out to my classmate's son, Derek Jackson. Then we get to the 2 heavyweight matchups of the week. Not going to talk too much about the Notre Dame Army game, you guys, because I have a channel called Talk Like a Champion. I already gave some insight into that game earlier. But the Notre Dame Fighting Irish were able to come out and take control of this game early with a couple of touchdown passes for Riley Leonard, who did a great job running the football. But Jeremiah Love was the tail of the tape in this week's game, you guys. He was able to come out and he had 7 carries for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns and had a long of 68. And that 68-yarder looked, oh my goodness, it's not even fair. Riley Leonard was 10 of 13, 148 yards and 2 scores. And not really a high statistical game for the Irish. It was one of those games where it was, Army was unable to capitalize on some things. Jadarian Price, whom arguably makes up one of the top 1-2 punches in the league, had 10 carries, 53 yards, 2 touchdowns of his own. Surprisingly enough, Riley Leonard did not have a rushing touchdown. But for a team that runs the football as much as Army does, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish outran them 275 to 207. And that's very impressive considering the Army Black Knights only threw the football 8 times in the entire game. And they were beaten 49 to 14. Once again, the Irish showing their dominance and Mike Denbrook showing a lot of different looks. Because when you play the Army Black Knights and the Navy Midshipmen, you're going to get a lot of different defenses in that 4-3 or that 50 variety thrown at you. And you have to be capable of blocking all of them. So you got to give a lot of misdirection, whether it's your blocking scheme or whether it's players in motion. Denbrook did a phenomenal job of that. And Bryson Dalen, who was running all over everybody, he still had 139, but it was on 39 carries. And there were quite a few plays where they got tapped in the backfield. And this Irish defense is one of the top defenses in the nation. I don't care what anybody has to say. Watching every single one of their games, they swarm. They swarm. But if you want to know more about Notre Dame and you don't want to be a hater, go to my channel, Talk Like a Champion, and find out about this game in more depth. But Notre Dame 49, Army 14. Notre Dame is right there in the mix with USC waiting in the wind. Ohio State 38, number 5 Indiana 15. Now, sitting here listening to all these so-called experts who did not watch this game, there was one guy that I watched and I was listening to him on the college football selection committee. Indiana ran this game the first quarter. And that thing that I was telling you about, I had to go all the way back to before Jim Tressel was there to watch the defense for the Ohio State Buckeyes where they were heavy blitz. After those 2 drives, I'm going to tell you, Indiana messed up when they did not go up 14-0. I think ultimately, you look at the numbers, 8 of 18, 68 yards. Curtis Rourke he got his completions at the very first 2 drives. After that, Ohio State was like, bump this, we bring in the house. Every time it was a passing down, Rourke was getting blitzed. And guess what? They didn't have an answer for it. And I hated the fact that the analysts did not pick up on that. But I guess, hey, Mr. CeeLo recognizes that. Ohio State is not known to blitz. They want to get pressure with 4. And I give Ryan Day props for that. He basically went backyard football. He said, hey, look, I already know I can't deal with this. This guy is a monster with the football. And he was carving them up. They had to get pressure. And unfortunately, the question had to become, okay, Indiana's offensive line is playing above their heads. What can we do to utilize that or neutralize it? Let's send more guys and see how they respond. And it worked. I didn't like how this game finished because looking at the way Travion Henderson went down, and that was probably one of those things. I'm going to make sure I keep this in my notes because I know how he is. He being Ryan Day, he should have never scored that touchdown. That should have been it. You didn't need to get no brownie points. What you need them for? What you scared you're going to lose Michigan next week? Or you going to lose Oregon in the rematch? I ultimately did not. I was impressed with the way they adjusted. That was what impressed me. There are some weaknesses in this Ohio State offense and this defense, especially the offense. They've got a kid out there on that defense and that secondary. He grabs a lot, and he got called for a lot of defensive pass interferences. Tyson Lawton, 15 carries, 79 yards, 2 touchdowns. Justin Ellison, 17 for 362. Yeah, Ohio State, Will Howard, 22 of 26, 201, 2 touchdowns. Travion Henderson, 9 carries, 68 yards, and a touchdown. Would have been 2. Keyshawn Judkins, 14 for 36. Emeka Egbuka, 7 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown. Cody Simon had 10 tackles and 2 sacks. He was huge for that Ohio State defense blitzing. JT Tuimoloau had a sack to go with Jack Sawyer's sack and a half. So, looking at Ohio State, there were some kinks in this. Don't let the score fool you. This is why Ryan Day put that extra touchdown on it, so he could leave no doubt that people were going to think that they could beat him. That's what he meant when he said doubt. He didn't have nothing to do. He wanted us to think that we were talking about the committee. No. Don't get it twisted. He wanted us to believe that he was doing it for the committee. No, he was doing it so that people wouldn't go back and watch the film and say, they ain't that good. And they played at home. Indiana gets in this thing, they're going to be trouble. Because I can tell you right now, their coach is going to have it figured out if you want to blitz us. Because listen, I can tell you, a lot of people were wondering if it was Curtis Rourke that was going to withstand it. It wasn't Rourke, he just didn't have enough time. And they had trouble adjusting. They felt like, this is how you could tell they knew that, this is how you could tell that they figured that Ohio State was not going to blitz. Because they didn't ever make adjustments until like halftime. They made no attempt to follow up the blitz and figure out something for the blitz. They didn't. I mean, if you go back and watch that game, I kept saying they're blitzing on every passing down. You got to come up with some kind of misdirection or some kind of screen that's going to neutralize that. At some point, you got to have something in your repertoire that's going to combat a blitz. And there were blitzes that were all-out blitzes. That's when you got to call a wide receiver screen or a bubble screen or something. But anyhow, Ohio State continues to stay one down. Indiana takes its first fall. And I was not happy with how it turned out. But guys, let me know what you think. What do you think about the breakdown of the Week 13 games? And what do you think about the AP polls as well as what the College Football Committee has done? Make sure you go to my Facebook page at Gridiron Gab Triple Option and you go and you add the group, add yourself to the group as well as to the real Facebook profile page. Also, don't forget, comment down below when you join the Gridiron Gab Triple Option family so I can know who you are and keep you in our immediate family logbook for insurance reasons. Ensuring that we have people that are going to be on our shows later on. As well as go to my Instagram at Mr. CeeLo and find out all the things that I'm involved in. Good, bad, funny, not so funny. But until the next time, I hope you guys have an awesome Thanksgiving. Hopefully I'm back with you before that. But if not, same Gab channel, same Gab platform.